We all remember recess growing up in school. Recess was a time of day where you get all the conversations that you could not have in class. Recess is where the real conversations are had, and real conversations are what we're going to have. In each episode of the Recess Podcast, I'm going to have real conversations explaining students in school. I'm your host, David McGuire. It's recess time, y'all. What's up, good people? It's Dave McGuire. I'm back with another episode of the Recess Podcast. It's funny, though, because y'all know I'm in Indianapolis, and we got this crazy amount of snow, so kids got indoor recess. So this is the indoor recess episode of the podcast, but I'm super excited. I'm back with an amazing guest and y'all favorite series, hashtag Free PD. We are back with it. This is another... I think I'm 3 for 3 when I tell the folks this. I say it's an episode. Listen, you about to get some free PD. I've been 3 for 3. We about to be 4 for 4 because when I tell you this has been a friendship 5 years in the making. She knew me when I was a young pup leader. When I used her book, The 1 Minute Meeting, to have foster productive meetings with my staff. I'm so excited. Episode is titled Becoming a Limitless Leader. And so we're going to learn about what it means to be a limitless leader, how we all can be a limitless leader, and how our limitless leadership can help grow and thrive the people we lead. So I'm joined by my friend, she's a mentor from afar, Dr. Mary Hemphill. How you doing today?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you so much for having me, David.
I'm excited to jump in. So I know you, I followed your works, but there may be a lot of folks who weren't really on the previous podcast. So before we kind of dive into limitless leadership, just who are you? Who are you, and tell us about you.
I love this question. And again, it's so good to reconnect with you. I'm excited about coming back in 2025 because I really believe, David, that 5 years ago, my answer to that question would have been different. In this work, in this journey that I've been on, being a human being in the work of education has been so critical. So when people ask me, or when they say, send me your bio or give me your intro, yes, I am the CEO and founder of the Limitless Leader. I call myself an edupreneur because I believe I blend education and entrepreneurship to be able to help people. I'm a leadership coach, a speaker, an author, and I love all of that. But I want to introduce myself today as a human being. And if I were to do that, it would sound like I'm a sister to Karen, who I have the beautiful privilege of working alongside in this work. I'm a daughter to William and Gloria, who just recently retired, and they're going into this new season of their life and learning all of the beautiful things that are on the other side of a sunset career. I'm also a friend. I'm a human. I unlearn a lot of things. I'm in this season where I'm really trying to figure out all the things that used to work, are they serving me in this season? I'm a fur baby mom to a sweet little 6-pound Shorkie named Huck. I'm a fierce advocate for being a voice for those people who haven't been invited into the room. And I'm an ally for making sure that those voices that aren't represented get to the table. And once they get there, that they're safe. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
See, you started early with the free PD, because as leaders, we have this habit, right? And you mentioned it, no matter what the space is, we can be at the church. Introduce yourself to the church. I'm a principal. I'm this. I got this. I'm like, wait a minute. We at the church. Like, that's nice. Good for you to have all these things. But who's Mary? Who's David? Right. And so as leaders, we have to get more to unlocking the human side of ourselves. I love that. Introducing yourself that way.
And you know, David, when I say I have seen that dismantle rooms, dismantle assumptions, because when we come into these PDs, when we go into schools, when we go into these districts, and we just lead with what people can Google about us, there's no real connection there. But as soon as I say I'm a fur baby mom, or as soon as I say I'm a human,
hands go up.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people start connecting. And I think as leaders, we have to be intentional, especially in this season that we're living in and leading in history. We got to start dismantling rooms. We have to start walking across the bridge, because we can't be the untouchables anymore. If people can't see us, if they can't relate to us, they will not, and they should not follow us.
That should not is key. That's huge. That should not. So you kind of touched on it. So let's dive into that. When you go to schools, when you meet with leaders, when you're sitting at seminars, when you're going to corporations and all these things,
Mhm.
what what are some of the biggest challenges that you
Mm,
see leaders doing,
mm,
that leaders experience? Like all of those, talk about those challenges that you're seeing,
yeah.
and how do you coach them through it?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest issue that I've seen, the biggest challenge that I've seen over the past couple of years is going in, working with teacher leaders, working with school leaders, even superintendents who are a leaderless leader. And when I say leaderless leader, what I mean is that the person or persons immediately above them, maybe their supervisors, maybe the person who does their evaluations, maybe sometimes even the person who hired them, they are ill equipped or they're unable to grow that person. They're unable to support that person in a way that's going to take that individual to the next level. And this leader, oftentimes, because they are a leaderless leader, they have this burning sensation inside them that there's more. They understand that if they were to dial it up, whether it be with their emotional intelligence, whether it be with their executive presence, whether it be in how they communicate, they know that there's something more inside them, but they don't yet have the person, the entity, the resource, the strategy to be able to get connected to that thing. And so, one of the things I talk about is how are you developing yourself online and offline? And when I say that, what I mean is we have so much free PD, we have so many free resources, we have so many free platforms out here that we cannot continue to put the person above us, our supervisors, in a space where we say, you are solely responsible for me leveling up. You are solely responsible for me leaving this position and being better. So, what does that look like? That means cultivating a circle and a network who know more than you, who are connected in more rooms than your feet can ever be in. It means going online and doing bio dives, finding educators and leaders and thought individuals who are truly changing the game and diving into their bio. Where are they going to get certifications? Where are they speaking at conferences? Because those are the intentional ways that you say, you know what? Instead of me asking to go to this specific conference, I'm going to go over here to this conference because one of the people that I admire and that I want to emulate, they are digging into this individual. They are digging into this experience. And I want to be like them in terms of getting and extrapolating this knowledge. So when you're a leaderless leader and you know that you have something inside you that has been planted, but nobody's watering it, nobody's nurturing it, it is incumbent upon you to ask for help. And when you ask for help, whether that be with your network in person, whether that be online with communities like LinkedIn or all of the beautiful educational communities that we have, that's when you start to cultivate yourself. Because it is unfair to the students you lead, it's unfair to the teachers you support for you to stay stagnant. So if you are a leaderless leader, start with some of those things that I talked about, but understand that there's a community here that is ready to help you cultivate. It's ready to pour into you. And I think the next step that we have to think about when we start thinking about these challenges is when your dream job becomes a daily nightmare, it is time to move your feet. I get asked to go to districts and schools where people have been too long. They've been invested too long. They've been in this role too long. And not that they are not still impactful, but they've lost that spark. They've lost that thing that gets people ignited and gets people mobilized. When you had that dream in the beginning, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, sometimes even 5 years ago, but you notice that there's more friction than flow, it's harder to get up out of bed in the morning and force yourself into that classroom. It's more difficult to stand with parents and community members and board members and have these conversations. And you literally have to muster up the strength to show up at 100%. It is worth examining. Is it still incumbent upon me to keep my feet where they're planted? Or do I need to pick up? Ask myself some tough questions. Ask myself, what's this next season? What's this next chapter? When I turn the page, what does it look like? Because the only thing that happens when your dream job becomes a nightmare is that everybody else starts to be impacted. You're a little bit more short with your significant other. Your students aren't connecting with you as much. The teachers, they don't listen to you because you're doing a lot of this and not enough of this. So whether you're a leaderless leader or whether it's time to move your feet, self-awareness is the first step. So you have to know when you're full. You have to know when you're being poured into, and you also have to know when you're becoming stale.
Man, ooh, there's a lot there. So I want to take it with this. A leaderless. I wrote that down. A leaderless leader, and it has me thinking about we have a lot of leaderless leaders
Mm-hmm.
trying to lead people,
Yes.
and something you said about what's the work you're doing online or offline to fill
Mm-hmm.
your cup. So we talk about people that when we say like you can't fill from an empty cup.
Uh-huh.
Typically, when we say that, we're talking about emotional.
Mm-hmm.
People have the right emotion, but sometimes the empty cup means you feeling from an empty cup on your own leadership because you feel like you've gotten to a place in your leadership that you don't need a leader.
Exactly.
How you
Exactly.
too big for a leader? But this person needs a leader?
Absolutely. And David, I'm so glad you said this because what we've realized over the past 5 going into 6 years in post-pandemic, we say all the time, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. COVID came in and revolutionized everything. So if you have a leader who's saying, I'm an expert at leadership, not only are they telling an untruth, but they are shielded from what's happening in the world because everything changed. The way we communicate changed. The way we collaborate changed. The way you and I connect changed, right?
Uh-huh.
Even though it's been 5 years, I don't feel like it's been 5 years because I've still been connected to your
Absolutely.
journey.
Hmm.
So when you have leaders who still believe, oh, I'm an expert. Yes, you're an expert of antiquated strategies and resources.
Mm.
Because to become an expert in this era means that you have to become friends with unlearning. The way it worked 5 years ago is not the way it works now. The students we're teaching are not the same students we're teaching now. Even the resources you used last year,
Are
because of
outdated sometimes. Hmm.
are done this year.
Yep.
So I love that you talked about this because it's again, we talk about self-care, self-care, self-care. Bubble baths and haircuts and going to the gym do not a good leader make.
Come on now.
We have to go back to self awareness,
Uh-huh.
self regulation. And when you are aware and you can regulate, then you can start doing self care. Because the first thing about self care is realizing that you're burnt out. That's how
Yep.
you know you need to do something.
Hmm.
And so these blind spots pop up everywhere in leadership.
Yeah. I've always said there's a second layer to self care.
Mm,
So when you're getting burnt out, you take a trip, go to the beach, lay out, feet in
yeah.
the sand, get some good sun. So you do that, you come back, you're refreshed. That second step is now, how do I improve my leadership? What
Mm,
free online course should I take? What podcast should I listen to? What books should I read? What
yes.
executive coach should I tap into? One of the best things that happened to me, I did the Black Principal Network through TLC. And one of the ways that they supported us was they gave us a therapist,
Mm,
option for free therapy, and a free executive coach. And I didn't understand when people didn't take advantage of both. I went to my therapist, vented about all my problems in life, went to my executive coach, vented about all my problems in leadership. The therapy gave
oh,
me tips and resources to get me, David, right. The executive coach said, let's get Dr. McGuire right. So he's working on David. I'm going to work on Dr. McGuire. He's working on Dr. McGuire. I'm going to work on David. Those things go interchangeably, but either we do one or the other. We go to the
mm,
beach and we try to come back and lead people, or we read a book and don't take time for ourselves. It's a twofold method. We got
oof,
to move to self care for leaders. Got to be twofold. That's my
exactly.
soapbox for
I
that.
know, and I love when I'm giving you snaps because the therapist is your human being,
Come
the
on.
executive coach is your human doing.
Ooh. Say that
Both
again for us. Say that again for us.
the therapist is your human being, who David is, how he's showing up, who he at the end of the day has to sit with. The
Mhm.
executive coach is David's human doing, who he is as a principal, who he is as an educator, how he is leading people. And because you answered the call to both, you showed up as a whole educator. We talk all the time about the whole child. You need to get the whole child, the whole child, the whole child. But we never say the whole educator, the whole
Right.
educator. We have to bring both to the table. And
We got to, because
I love
yeah,
this.
we got half educators trying to teach whole kids. That don't even fit.
Bars. That, that.
I'm just like, to your point, right? Like half the educators trying to teach the whole kid.
Mm,
You know what? Let's talk about limitless leaders, because that's what
okay.
we giving the folks free PD, and this is why I knew this episode was going to be great. Reconnecting, and doing this. So let's dive into it, because when I first met you, that's where we were at, and that's been the work. That's been the
Okay.
work that you're doing. So all the work that you've done has been around it. So let's put a definition on it,
Okay.
because when people hear it, they want to know, what does it mean. So what does it mean
Mm.
to
A
be a
lim-
limitless leader?
I love this question. And when people ask me, first of all, I start with defining a leader, because a lot of people believe I'm only a leader if I have the title. I'm only a leader if I'm on the org chart somewhere. I define a leader as having influence over anything. So if you are leading your life, if you are making decisions that impact yourself, impact other people, it doesn't matter how small or how large that group is, you are a leader. You become limitless when you tap into the potential inside you to shatter the status quo, to do it differently than anybody in your bloodline has ever dared to think it possible. When you take something that has worked in an organization and you are inherently able to make it better, to make it more supportive, and make it more inclusive for all the people at the table. One of the things that my PhD professor told me, and I shared this with you 5 years ago, but it has evolved so much, because he said to me, Mary, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. A leaderless leader understands that there's a question that they don't ask that a limitless leader would. And that is, when you sit down at that table, when you get that opportunity, when you get that job, when you have that idea, when you get that contract, and you say, okay, I'm here, I've arrived, I've done it, this is exciting. You look down the table on either side and you say, who is missing from this table? A limitless leader is not about the self-propriety of saying, I did it, I'm amazing, I'm here. It is literally about opening doors, creating systems, and renewing mindsets so more people can be seen, heard, felt, and feel safe to show up and bring all their authenticity to the table, bring all their ideas to the table. Because a limitless leader understands that they were once limited, whether it was by society, whether it was by the rules and regulations and the policies, but somehow they transcended. Even if that transcendence doesn't mean they reach success, they're different in some calculable and accountable way. And they are committed to opening doors or windows or whatever for other people to come in, to be in. And here's the thing, David, to stay in.
Mm.
It's not just enough for us to open doors and for people to get a peek at a new demographic or a new language or a new way to do it. No, limitless leaders have staying power. When they say something, it sticks with you after they've left the room. When they change something, it remains even if they leave the organization. And that's deeper than just coming in and saying, they're a transformational principle. That's great when you change it for that year or those 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
A limitless leader understands, when I make David better, that means he's going to make good decisions when I'm in the room and when I'm not in the room. I used to tell teachers all the time, do your best teaching when I'm not in the room. Please don't let your best teaching be the observation. I know how to read and write and do arithmetic. I need those students to know that your best is not hinged on the fact of me or my AP or an instructional facilitator being in the room. Are you accountable to yourself? That's a limitless leader.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk in tomorrow and I'm gonna tell my teacher, don't do your best teaching when I come. That was a ball because there's a lot you said. I'm gonna get to that, but I gotta stay here for a second. Just for 1 second. Because that is powerful.
Mm.
Going back to like our previous conversation, right? The right leaders can say that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because the right leaders can see that and can say that. Now, I want to a lot of stuff you said. So I'm in the process of writing this 3-part series with the Indianapolis Recorder called "The Hidden Cost of Leadership." So
Mm.
the first part was I called it the problem, this hidden cost of leadership, all the things that you mentioned and I mentioned. The second part that's going to come out in a couple of weeks is defining the problem.
Mm.
Then early February is the solution. My question for you is this: you mentioned something when you were talking about a limitless leader, and you were talking about that the recognition of that power to be limitless. And sometimes the excuses that happen, and I don't know if excuse is the right word, but we blame it on, like you said, society. We blame it on the systematic, the education system is not wasn't built for us. And that all that is true.
Yes.
But it feels like that we're just recycling an excuse on why we can't reach our limitless potential as
Yes.
leaders.
Yes.
So if when a leader goes to you and says that, but doc, it's the system. It's my district leadership. It's the kids, it's the teacher, it's the upbringing. How do you break through that
Mm.
to get them to see their own limitless potential that is inside of them? Because that's what you're helping folks get out. You're helping folks bring out what's already in all of us.
Yeah.
But how do you break through when it's buried so deep in?
The first thing, and first, that's an amazing question. The first thing I say to people, especially when they're giving me the sing song of excuses, sing song,
Yeah, yeah.
is I reimagine their perspective so that they understand that it's a superpower. So for instance,
Mm,
you and I can't solve a problem unless we both agree that there is one. So the
yes.
person coming to me is oftentimes saying, well, I can't do it because of this, or I can't do it because of this. And I say, mm-mm. Do you realize that you just recognized a problem and had the courage, had the
Mm,
gumption, had the fortitude to not only recognize that it's a problem, but it was enough for it to inspire you to action and come to me and say something.
yes.
I don't give place, I don't give energy, and I don't give resources to excuses because what you
Mm,
feed is going to grow. So if I feed their excuses, it's going to become the soundbite that they walk down the hall and share with their colleague, and then they talk about in the community. So once I say you've identified an issue and a problem, because you see it in such a unique way, because you understand that it is an issue, I believe that you're the only person who's going to help us solve it. Notice I said help us. Notice I said
mm-hmm.
didn't say you're going to solve it. Immediately, when people start giving you the sing song of excuses, what they're generally saying is there's a problem that's bigger than me, and I'm not sure how to solve it. I'm actually looking for you to justify the fact that it
Mm,
actually is a problem. They're not saying that they want to stay rooted and grounded in the excuses. People need to read between the lines. So
mm-hmm.
once we have talked about the problem and really understand that there is a path forward, I use words like us. I use words like we. How can I support you? And then here's the question: what's your next best step?
Mm,
So, yes, the school system is what it is. Yes, the policies are what they are. What's your next best step? And I go down the list with them. What resources do you have in your locus of control? What people do you know that have power in rooms your feet haven't been in to add value and add a light and a fire to this conversation? Do I need to do a soft introduction to a board member? Do we need to invite the superintendent here to be able to hear what you're saying? When people come to you with the excuses, they
mm,
want leverage. And you, in your locus of control, can help give them that leverage, but it's all about perspective. Because the minute you say, yeah, school district is terrible, really can't get anything done, you know what you just partnered with them on? Stagnancy. You
mm,
partnered with them on staying exactly where the problem has always been. What's your next best step? Because even if we can only move it to the next best step in this 180-day school year, it's going to be better for the next teacher that recognizes that it's a problem. And hopefully they'll have a leader or an administrator who will help them with the next best step to move it even further.
Transforming schools, one limitless leader at a time. I'm telling you. Listen, y'all. This I told y'all. Episode 9. This is season 4. I said it when I was advertising it that these last 3 episodes before the season finale was our hashtag free PD. And I'm here, Dr. Mary Hemphill. We're talking about being a limitless leader, and we're unpacking a lot. So, because we're going to talk about your books, because in your introduction, right, on the you told us the human, but on the work side, we know you're a speaker, we know you're a trainer, consultant, and all, and you're in the office. So before we get to the books, I want to stay here for one more second. I want to ask you, how have you seen? So if folks are listening, they're like, okay, this I like this. It makes sense. But now I'm the type I want to know. So who is the doctor work with where she's helped them tap into their limitless leadership, and now it's served improvement. So whether that's a business leader or a school leader, where have you seen, and not names, but where have you seen when leaders have tapped into that limitlessness and improvements have happened? Can you
Yeah.
share some of those stories?
Yes. So I was working with a school principal who was just coming in. He was the 6th principal that they'd had, I believe, within a 4-year span. And one of the things that he really had to do was rebuild the culture. And he wanted to come in and do all these amazing initiatives and bring the parents and community members in. And I said, that's fantastic. And I think that's great. But what we're really seeing here, you being the 6th in a long line of individuals and school leaders who have not been effectual, is we have to redevelop that trust. If they don't trust you, and I mean every stakeholder group, if the students don't trust you, if the teacher leaders and our paraprofessionals and support staff don't trust you, it's going to be that much more difficult for you to move the needle. And so what we started doing is having opportunities for him to really redevelop and re-energize and redefine what that trust looked like. So for instance, in his opening meeting, he said something like, I have an open door policy. And I said, I want you to stop right there. When we hear these things as leaders that we've heard over and over and over again for decades, I can't tell you how many leaders I've worked for who said we have an open door policy. I tune out because you train people how to treat you as a leader. And if you step into the shoes and the stilettos of people who have said that thing and not delivered, people inherently and psychologically are going to put you in the same category. I said, I want you to stop there. Your goal is not to sound like, feel like, or be like any of the leaders in the past. How can we take that phrase and turn it on its head? So he moved it from, I have an open door policy, to, I promise you that I'm going to be where my feet are. If my feet are in the cafeteria, you have an issue, come up and let's have a conversation. If my feet are on the playground and I see students playing kickball, I want to go play kickball with them. If I'm at the grocery store, the YMCA, or football Friday night, and my feet are there and I'm working with parents, I promise you that I'm going to be present. I said, that sounds different. That's going to get people to lean in. And the difference is going to be your follow through. That means you can't be in the cafeteria and be on your phone and be too busy to be present when people come up to you with an issue. And I mean, you have to be present when the teacher who's a high flyer in your office comes up, and you have to be present for the teacher who never asks you for help. That means that when the angry parent comes into the office, you have to treat them with the same humility and respect and reverence as you would your PTA president. And that's going to turn the needle because people are going to learn through the experience and exposure of you. But if you start off sounding like everybody else, it's going to be 80% more difficult and arduous for you to turn the ship around. So that's what we do. We work with leaders to understand your language matters. How you follow through and show up matters. We worked with a C-suite leader. We were called in right after George Floyd, and we had to work with this particular C-suite leader to create and craft their comments that would go out to over 20,000 employees across 5 continents. And when she got on the Zoom call with me, she said, Mary, I'm just going to go through, I'm just going to do a draft. I said, yeah, we'll start it out. And she started out, and the first words were, I don't see color. And I stopped her. I said, let's stop right there. I
Yep.
said, you are about to address 20,000 different experiences on an international issue of understanding that the world is watching right here. And what you say in this moment is going to either have leaders mobilize, or you're going to literally dismantle all the hard work that you've put in. When you say, I don't see color, you erase almost 50% of the people who work with you. Because if you don't see color, you don't see me. If you don't see color, you don't see the experiences of people of color. You don't understand the cultural nuances and all of the challenges we have gone through. I said, I'm going to challenge you to turn that statement on its head. And instead of saying, I don't see color, I want you to say, I see the world in technicolor. Because what that does is it invites people into the room. It shows that you don't have a lens on that's black or white, because we don't live in a binary world. We live in a world that's full of the beautiful shades and hues and colors and experiences of cultures and creeds and religions and backgrounds and races and ethnicities. And she took my advice, and she said that she actually had an executive coach who she shared that same speech with, and he said nothing about that statement. But the feedback that she got when she turned that statement on its head and opened it up, and she said, more importantly, how it shifted her mentally. She not only retired that statement, but she was so grateful and said, I'm even more intentional now with the language that I use and the way that I say I hold space. I realize that my words have to show it. So those are just two examples of
Mm-hmm.
our coaching and what it means to really have this bird's eye view on the impact we have as leaders, and how just small changes in our language, our follow through, and our accountability can really take you from limited to limitless.
I love that because even though the things that they changed were small, what folks understand as when you're in a role of leadership
Mhm.
is that sometimes it's those very small changes that are the hardest and will have the biggest impact. You would think that, well, just don't say I don't see color, or don't say I have an open door policy. It sounds simple. It sounds easy. That seems like an easy fix, but it's not, right? Because those things, like you said, the not having the awareness with I don't see color, or I feel that principle because that's what you were trying. Hey, you want to operate a school that has an open door policy, and it's just language. And so it's not until someone points it out to you.
Mm,
Step one, it's not until you hear it,
yeah.
and then as you said, then you turn it on its head, and then you make the change. But that's hard.
Yes. It's difficult.
It is very difficult.
And it's difficult because, again, we've been in an echo chamber. There's so
Yes.
many phrases. I'm sure you and I could give 20 phrases right now that we hear all the time in education,
Mm-hmm.
David, that mean nothing. And
Mm-mm.
not only do they mean nothing, they move nothing. They don't move goals, they don't move students, they don't move schools.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the piece, it's not just about saying them, it's about asking yourself, after I say this, do I have the capacity? Do I have the bandwidth? And am
Mm,
I disciplined enough to actually do what I said I was going to do?
mm,
Because credibility is your currency. Some leaders are working from a good, healthy, fat bank account of credibility. And
mm-hmm.
some are so in debt that they've gotten credit cards and tried to put credibility on credit. And it does not work.
Mm-mm.
So when you start thinking about that, and the alignment of what I say, what I do, and what I have the capacity to do, that's that self awareness piece I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Stop making promises that you cannot walk through. Stop creating opportunities and programs and initiatives that you know your district, your school, and your community do not have the bandwidth to follow through on. Because this is
Mm-hmm.
ultimately about the most important stakeholder, who's the students. And we're teaching them, again, leaders, you train people how to treat you. We're showing our students how they should treat one another, how they should connect one another, how they should collaborate with one another. And I tell people all the time, when I was in middle school principal had this group of girls come to me, sixth grade girls, about four of them. You would have thought it was the Mean Girls edition, okay? Like they were doing the sequel to the movie, talking about each other, being catty, talking behind each other's back, just sucking their teeth, just being nasty. And I'm doing my investigation. I'm talking to them. And I said, ladies, you are sweet little girls. I know your families, and you come from a good community. What is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I saw Miss Lentz roll her eyes every time Miss Smith walks into the cafeteria.
Ooh.
The media coordinator, she doesn't like so and so down the hall, and so she just rolls her eyes every time she comes. Students see these
The
things.
babies is watching. The
There you go.
babies are watching.
So how can I hold students accountable and possibly a suspension or whatever sort of reprimand, and then walk into a PD and a staff meeting and not say something to the adults in the room who are curating the environment that they learned it in?
Mm-mm.
Unacceptable.
Ooh. Ooh.
Unacceptable. So when I say
Mm-hmm.
think about being where your feet are, when I say think about what it is that we're really putting out, what we're saying and what we're doing, nobody's perfect, but we can always be better.
Ooh. Mm. Okay. Hashtag free PD. You know what I'm gonna do my final early real quick. You know what I took what I've been taking from everything you're saying?
Mhm.
And it's a self-reflection that the to get to limitless leadership, sometimes we have to be honest with our own ability. Because you said something about the recognition that I needed is when I go and seek and ask for it.
Mm,
But that comes from an honest place of where you are with the ability. Because you said it like with certain things, do I have the capacity and the bandwidth,
mhm,
right? To
mhm.
do this. If I say I'm gonna do something, do I have the capacity and bandwidth to do it? Then I have to ask myself, do I even got the ability to do it? And if I don't, how do I seek the right people to help me get the ability? It's
Yes.
okay if you don't have the ability. That doesn't make you less of a leader. What makes you less of a leader is if you don't recognize you need to don't have the ability and don't seek it.
Say that. That is it. And that goes back to the question you asked me about the excuses and staying stuck.
Uh-huh.
And that's fine. But if you understand that you're stuck, is there somebody you've seen who gave you a glimmer of being unstuck? Go connect with them. Go ask them.
Okay.
Go talk to them. Question when you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. We got to stop being afraid to ask for help, ask questions, ask for
Yes.
more. It's possible. It's
Okay.
possible.
In your closing, I want to ask you. So, collaborative leadership for cultivating a culture of wellness.
Yeah.
I, that's how we're gonna end this, right? I
Okay.
want to we want to know, right? But so I'm about to buy it on Amazon. So give me tease us. Don't give us all of it, right?
Okay.
It is look. It's I tell all the guests when I say hashtag free PD, we're giving folks free PD so then they actually buy the real PD. So don't give us all of it. Give us a little taste and a little tease
Absolutely.
of what the work is you're doing with that.
Absolutely. So, as I talked about when in this book, when we talk about cultivating a culture of wellness, we're not just talking about how do we equip teachers to be able to teach and how do we ensure that school principals have the resources and the understanding to be able to lead. What we're talking about is how do I put you on a path so that you can be well in this work? How do I ensure that I'm understanding your workload? We say all the time, teachers' plates are full, and they are overflowing. But do we understand that one teacher's capacity to avoid burnout is absolutely not the same teacher's capacity to avoid burnout that's down the hall? Understanding well being means starting with what are the resources that you have in your control? What are the opportunities that you have to pour back into yourself? What are your support systems that you have online and offline? And where can I start to fill in the gaps for you? When we start talking about a culture of wellness, what we're saying is if I were to take my school environment and my school culture and hold a mirror up to it, and then put a child in front of that mirror, would I be proud of? And would I be excited about what they see? And would I be comfortable with them emulating the same behaviors they see me doing every single day so that when they graduate or when they matriculate, they are also well?
Mm. Go get the book. It's out. It's out now, right?
Yes, it is. It is
It's
out
out
now.
now. Okay, so I've listened to this, right? So I'm thinking I'm listening to this, but the doctor hasn't even told us how we can reach her. So I've listened. We people got through the podcast and I didn't want to know. Well, I want to reach out. Of
Yeah.
course they can Google, but if I'm listening, how can folks reach out to? Where can they find you if they want to learn more about you, I'll get your services, how can they find you?
Yes, please go to my website, www.bealimitlessleader.com. And there's multiple ways for you to interact. Sign up for the Limitless Lounge. That's our monthly newsletter where we have all types of resources and articles, strategies, and writers who are going to help pour into you. On LinkedIn at Dr. Mary Hemphill, you can keep up with sort of my day-to-day. I'm always dropping videos and different things of that nature to really pour into your leadership cup. And then on Instagram, The Limitless Lady, you can see me living out my limitless lifestyle, but also getting resources and strategies so that you can create micro habits throughout your leadership life.
Doctor, thank you so much. I told y'all hashtag free PD is here. Listen, this has been an amazing episode. My call to action is simple for everybody. 1, reach out.
Yes.
Reach out, tap in. This podcast was, we talk about hashtag free PD. This was just a teaser. There's so much more and so much more that we all need. And so I'm encouraging everybody to tap in, share this with folks, get the resources, buy the book. I will stand on this forever. School leaders, the 1-minute meeting, I'm telling you, this is not folks that know me, listen, I don't just throw out books and just talk. The book did everything. Still use it to this day, and that's almost 5 years ago. New schools, different schools, elementary, now secondary, it's all the same. Great resource. Definitely tap in, but tap into it all. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on with me. Season 4, this has been episode 9 of the Recess Podcast, Becoming a Limitless Leader. As I always say, create the platform, control the conversation, change the culture. See you next week. This has been the Recess Podcast, and I'm your host, David McGuire. If you want to interact more with the Recess Podcast, subscribe to our YouTube page at the Recess Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, the Recess Podcast 1, and subscribe and like wherever you get your podcasts. As I always say, create the platform, control the conversation, change the culture. See you next episode.